Hello, I'm Sam Pearl, and this is The Art of Dealmaking. Today my guest is Aldy Keene, CEO and founder of Loyalty Research Center. Aldy, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Sam.
Aldy, first, can you tell me a little bit about your professional history?
Personally, I'm an economist, trained here at the University of Chicago in economics. Professionally, I spent most of my career looking at customer relationships. The interesting connection to economics is, how does it relate to behaviors? What we want to explain in economics is, what are customer behaviors and what drives them? Professionally, that's what I've done all my career, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
What does Loyalty Research Center bring pre-transaction to private equity firms?
That's great, Sam. Happy to do it. Let me give you a little bit of perspective on the Loyalty Research Center to begin with. First, we're in our 18th year. And that whole 18 years, what we've looked at are three things, Sam. First, what are the relationships that our clients have with their customer base? Second, when you measure those relationships, you're going to see a distribution. Why does that distribution exist? Why do we have some strong relationships, some weak? And third, based on that understanding, what can you do about it? Now let me make it interesting. Those relationships, those are monetized. The big thing that we do is look at customer relationships and say, what are they worth to the organization? They produce income flow to the organization, not only this year, but in future years. How can we monetize that? What are the customers worth? And recognizing that, how do we make investments in changing customer relationships that then changes the value of that customer base, a big contributor to the capital value of the organization. So with that as backdrop, so what do we do pre-diligence? Well, we're talking about private equity transactions. Somebody buying another organization. Sometimes it's a strategic buyer. A lot of times it's private equity. What do you do pre-transaction and diligence? Historically, we've looked at what's the risk or vulnerability in the customer base. Let's talk about that just for a second. You can have risk or vulnerability in two ways. You can look at first the percentage of customers that are vulnerable, at risk. Typically, we find somewhere in the order of magnitude of 20 to 25% of customers in that category. Now, frankly, that surprises most management teams and most investors, but it's a reality of business life today. 20 to 25% are vulnerable. The question is it coming from something that we're doing as an organization systemically to create those bad experiences and vulnerable customers? Or second, is it the customer themselves, something inherent in that customer? Let's talk about both of those. First, are we doing something? Do we have a process that's broken? Do we have people that are not following process, not complying? Is there something going on in the organization that's creating those bad experiences, bad relationships, and prospectively weak behaviors? What do I mean by weak behaviors? We get less share of spend. We have to buy their ongoing behaviors by charging lower prices. We get bad referrals. Or they just defect. Those are all bad behaviors. They cost us money. Are we doing something to trigger that, to create it? If I'm an investor and I look at that and uncover, first I want to know how many of them are there, how many customers are vulnerable or at risk. The second thing I want to know is why. What's the system? What's the understanding of why they exist? What are the top 2 or 3 reasons? And if I can identify those top 2 or 3 reasons, that's good for me because I can do something about it. That's great news, but I want to know how many and why. Now there's a second reason, and I alluded to it, something inherent in the customer. Is there a customer that's a great customer for us? That is, they want the benefits of our business model, the things that we produce, the product and service mix that we provide. There's also segments that don't want that or want something different. Are we selling to the right customer? You could say in terms of business design, our marketing and sales process is maybe a little errant. We're selling to the wrong customer. Let me give you an example. We had one client that made a chemical that was a substitute for wood pulp in the production of paper. Great product. Whereas the rest of the industry created a standard product, a commodity, this firm had a patent-protected line of chemical substitutes. Their product produced a better writing paper if your product was writing paper, better newsprint, better cardboard. They customized it to your need, and it enabled you to sell your product to customers that wanted a better product. That was their strategy. In looking at their customer base, we found 23% of their customers were vulnerable. The management team said, what can we do? We can't have 23% vulnerable customers. First of all, of course, they were surprised, shocked. Second, what can we do about it? We want to eliminate that vulnerability. When we dug down into it, we learned that 80 to 85% of those customers in the vulnerable category really wanted something different from the business model that this firm provided. They didn't want a custom product. They wanted a short order cycle time. We want to order it today, we want it shipped today. This firm couldn't do that. They took the spec of your product, they understood it, they put it into the production queue, they may manufacture it in 2 or 3 days, and then ship it to you. You want it today? Well, then we have to expedite it. Then we have to do all kinds of things to try to keep you happy. They weren't in that business. So 23% vulnerable customers, most of them, 80 to 85%, because they wanted something different. And we couldn't change our business model to easily accommodate those customers. It would be very, very expensive. I'll tell you something else that's interesting, Sam. So the management team decided what to do. The lots of hugs strategy. Let's just give them a lot of love. Now, what's the result of a lot of love strategy? You spend a lot more executive time, tech support time, sales time, logistics time. You expedite a lot of orders. That's costly. It's costly, and again, these customers will never, ever migrate to a stronger relationship, ever. They're not going to change. So the cost to this firm was enormous. For many of those customers, they actually lost money. And bigger, the opportunity cost of not spending the time with customers that would migrate, that really did want the model you provided. The cost of not spending the time with them was enormous, it was gigantic. The lots of hug strategy was really very, very costly. So the other reason you have these vulnerable customers may be because you're targeting the wrong type of customer. The other thing that comes out of these studies is, who should we be targeting? So let me recap just for a second. One, are we creating this through a broken process, through poor training, poor compliance, poor management, and it could be fixed? And that's why we have the vulnerability. Or second, have we targeted the wrong customer? Also a very, very costly mistake to make. Now there are 2 other subtleties about looking at vulnerability. One is, you may have a really strong relationship with a set of customers, but it's really not that strong. What do I mean? Well, you can really have strong loyalty, but it's to the account rep, not to the organization. Then you have to be very concerned about what's your relationship with the account team. Are they going to defect sooner or later after the transaction? That's a cause for concern. Second, are there emerging solutions that are going to be competitors for your solution? Something a little more distant. We see that with some of our clients and in some of these transactions when above a certain level, some of the customers want to in-house a solution instead of continuing to buy from the organization that is involved in the transaction.
Some of the considerations that you're talking about seem like they'd be difficult to value, with certainty at least. Would you say that's the case?
Good question, Sam. And that's where statistics and science come into it. What you want to do is select a set of customers that are representative of the customer base and examine them very carefully. Fortunately, there is some real science involved in this and how you establish how they really feel, what their perception is of the organization, its products and services, and how you establish priorities. Let me give you an example. Back in the 80s, people would ask, how satisfied are you? And Sam, thinking about organization ABC, how satisfied would you say you are? Would you say you're extremely, very, somewhat, not at all satisfied? Just to give you an example. Sounds good. Works horribly. When I go to look at, can I then use that to explain and differentiate and discriminate Sam's behavior across the alternatives in the marketplace? I can't do it consistently. It just doesn't work that well. It sounds great, it just doesn't work. Let me give you another example. Establishing priorities. And Sam, thinking about all those factors that go into your decision, how important are they? Let me ask you about factor A, the responsiveness of customer service. Would you say that's extremely, very, somewhat, not at all important to you? Oh, it's very important. And you know what we find, Sam? Of the attributes we ask about, the top 40 or 50 are all very important. You just don't get any discrimination. What you need back from this exercise, from this research, is real prioritization of what's driving customer behaviors. And frankly, beyond minimum requirements, it's 2 or 3. And that's what you need to focus on. When you have 40 or 50, you simply can't execute.
If you could give one piece of advice to businesses who are looking to ensure that their customers have a high level of loyalty, what would that be?
One piece of advice to ensure that customers are loyal. Well, let me start with looking at the flip side. What can we look at to ensure that if there's one piece of advice, that they're not vulnerable? You know, we create vulnerability all the time. One surprise is that roughly 20% of our clients have customers that will say, I've experienced a significant problem in dealing with your organization over the past 6 to 12 months. 20% of customers say, significant problem in the last 6 to 12 months. And a high percentage of those are unresolved because the company's not even aware of it. One of the easy things to do for any organization is simply to train their employees to look for problems, to ask customers, are you having a problem? How's our relationship? But honestly and sincerely ask about it, listen for it, and then think about a solution. I'm going to give you an example, and it's a personal example. Several years ago, I was staying at a Marriott hotel close to O'Hare Airport. I put my breakfast selections on my doorknob the night before. The next morning, no breakfast. Called down, they didn't have a record of it. Okay. Now, I didn't blame the hotel. I thought someone had probably wandered by, maybe a little inebriated, had taken it off my doorknob the night before, another guest. Didn't blame the hotel at all. When I came out the next morning, after having called down and ascertained that breakfast was not on its way, I was checking out and a young man at the desk asked me in a bright, enthusiastic way, and how was your stay? To which I responded, okay. I didn't complain, wasn't unhappy, it was okay. Sir, was there something that happened or something we could have done better? No, I didn't get my breakfast this morning. To which his immediate response was, he pulled a $10 bill out of his pocket and said, let me buy you breakfast in here right now. Sorry, I got to go catch the shuttle. That's a great offer. Here, as he leaned the $10 across the counter, have breakfast at the airport on me. Now, I told this story on the shuttle, at the small shop in the airport where I had breakfast, on the plane, and in lots of different venues like this for the past 15 years. He was happy and I was happy. Boy, that sounds simple. Is it simple? You know, a lot of times people in that situation would have said, let me go talk to my boss. No, don't do that. I don't want to take time to resolve this. You know, just give me my bill and let me leave. Another option is, what would you like for me to do about it? I don't want you to do anything about it. You asked me if there was an issue, I told you about it. He was trained to immediately propose a solution, which probably went way, I can tell you, went way beyond what I expected. And again, it made him happy, it made me happy, it started the day off just great. recognizing problems, having solutions ready-made, and implementing them flawlessly. That's an easy way to do away with vulnerability for some of your customers. How do you create loyalty? Well, you've got to have minimum requirements met. Products may be minimum requirements, certain service levels. But the big thing that we find with many of our customers is that they want a relationship. What are you doing to really understand the customer, know the customer, and have a strong personal relationship with them? I don't have to call in every time and re-explain, either for the same transaction, everything that's preceded it. You know the history of my transactions. That's an important component for many customer relationships. Just understanding that customer, knowing them, and sincerely establishing this relationship over time.
Aldy, thanks. That's a great story.
Thanks, Sam.
Again, Aldy Keene, CEO and founder of Loyalty Research Center. And as always, here's to the deal.